Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this special edition of Learn and Invest with Gabriel B. Ajak. Today is June 3, 2026. In this video, we break down investments rich people make before poor people hear about them in the news.
The wealthy, they don't measure returns in percentages. They measure returns by whether they have literally any of their own money left in the deal. Think about that for a second. While most retail investors are glued to their screens agonizing over a 5% market dip or sweating over a high-yield savings rate, the ultra-wealthy are out there playing an entirely different game. Actually, scratch that. They aren't playing a game at all. They are ruthlessly optimizing a system. It's about prioritizing tax elimination, capturing cash flow that completely ignores the stock market, and ultimately owning the very infrastructure of finance itself. So today, this explainer is going to be your absolute masterclass in these hidden mechanics.
So here is our blueprint for today. We're going to start by building tax fortresses, then move right into hacking the debt system, explore alternative cash flow machines, uncover exactly what it means to buy the casino, and finally, we'll wrap it all up with a learn and invest blueprint for your own life. Let's dive in.
But before we get started, please note, the information discussed in this video is strictly for educational purposes only and does not constitute professional advice. Learn and Invest is a listener and reader-supported podcast. To receive new episodes and support our work, consider becoming a free or paid subscriber. Have feedback? Please email us at gabriel.ajak@hotmail.com and include the title of this series in the subject line.
Okay, Section 1, Building Tax Fortresses, Escaping the Retail Tax Trap.
You see, the retail trap is focusing purely on high market returns, but the ultra-wealthy, they prioritize something way more powerful, and that's erasing tax friction. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much you make. It literally only matters how much you keep. To the wealthy, geography and citizenship, well, they're basically just asset classes. Take the United States, for example, and the strategy called Act 60. Imagine you have a business exit in San Francisco for $20 million. You are handing roughly $4.7 million of that straight to the IRS. Ouch, right? But if you move yourself and your business to Puerto Rico and you spend 183 days a year there, your federal capital gains tax on new investments drops to exactly zero. Zero. You keep the whole shebang. The wealthy understand that the country printed on their passport or the state on their driver's license is entirely negotiable. They're just buying their way into a better tax code.
Let's move to another strategy, because it really shows how this builds. Now, you probably own an S&P 500 index fund, right? That's standard retail investing. But the wealthy use something called direct indexing. Instead of buying one big fund, they use a managed account to buy all 500 stocks individually. Now, why on earth would they do that? Well, because even in a year where the overall market is up, say 20%, hundreds of those individual stocks are going to go down. With a standard index fund, those losses are hidden. They're completely useless to you. But with direct indexing, you get to harvest those individual losers. You sell them, book the loss on your personal tax return, and then rebalance. This brilliant little move allows the wealthy to offset massive capital gains from things like real estate sales or business exits. To put that into perspective, on a $20 million portfolio, that generates an extra $300,000 to $600,000 a year in tax savings. They get the exact same market exposure as you and me, just with zero tax friction. It's a real game changer.
But honestly, the sheer scale of these tax fortresses is what's truly mind-blowing. $130 million? That is roughly what Steve Ballmer gets to deduct against his personal income every single year. How is that even possible? There's something called the Veeck loophole. When he bought the LA Clippers for $2 billion, the US tax code literally allowed him to categorize the human players on the roster as depreciating assets. Yeah, you heard that right, just like factory machinery. So he gets to deduct the entire $2 billion purchase price over 15 years against his Microsoft dividends and totally unrelated income. So that sports team isn't just a shiny trophy, it's a colossal, government-sanctioned tax shelter.
All right, moving right along to Section 2, Hacking the Debt System, Infinite Returns and Tax-Free Collateral.
So, growing up, most retail investors are taught to fear debt, right? Like it's a trap. But the elite, they view debt as a tax-free wealth vehicle. They use it to generate infinite returns and access liquidity without ever triggering a taxable event. The absolute key here is understanding the mechanics of commercial real estate. Let's walk through this infinite return loop step by step. First, you buy a distressed property, you renovate it, and then, naturally, you raise the rent. Now, because commercial real estate is valued based on the income it generates, the building is suddenly worth significantly more. Next step, you go to the bank and do a cash-out refinance. You pull out enough cash to pay off your original loan and entirely recoup your down payment. Boom! You now have exactly $0 of your own money left in the deal. And here is the kicker, folks. That cash you pulled out is completely tax-free. Why? Because the IRS doesn't tax borrowed money. So you still own the building, it's still generating cash flow every single month, and your return on invested capital, it is mathematically infinite. No way, right? But it's absolutely true.
Okay, but it doesn't stop with real estate. The wealthy absolutely hack the insurance system too. They don't just go out and buy insurance. They build their own captive insurance companies, usually setting them up in places like Bermuda. Here's how the flow works. Their own businesses pay premiums to this captive insurance company. Now, those premiums are fully tax-deductible for the operating business, which immediately drops their taxable income. But inside the captive company, that money just sits there as float and it grows tax-deferred. The captive can then take that cash and invest it in private equity or even buy life settlements from the elderly. By the way, this is the exact structure Warren Buffett used to build Berkshire Hathaway. He got unbelievably wealthy by investing billions in insurance float. It's basically using other people's money and compounding it tax-deferred. Absolutely brilliant.
Now, this exact principle applies to luxury assets too. That glitzy art world you see in the news, that is just a retail show. The real magic is happening quietly in hyper-secure, tax-free Geneva Freeports. Picture this. A billionaire buys a $10 million Picasso and ships it straight to the Freeport. No sales tax, no import duty. Let's say 5 years later, that painting appreciates to $14 million. Now, instead of selling it and getting hit with massive capital gains taxes, they use it as collateral. They secure a $5 million line of credit at a jaw-dropping 4% interest rate. Then they take that tax-free cash and use it to fund their next major business deal. You see, the art isn't really the asset here. The true asset is the access to ultra-cheap, tax-free capital that the art unlocks for them.
And they do this on a personal level as well, through specially designed, overfunded whole life insurance. This functions basically as a private, invisible banking system. You pour cash into the policy, where it grows tax-deferred at a guaranteed rate. Then, when you need money to fund a new deal, you don't actually withdraw your cash. Instead, you borrow against your own cash value directly from the insurance company. That borrowed money, it's a tax-free loan. Meanwhile, your original cash inside the policy just keeps compounding, acting as if you never even touched it. Fun fact, Walt Disney used this exact strategy to fund Disneyland when traditional banks completely rejected him. Ray Kroc used it to fund the early rapid expansion of McDonald's. Think about it. No credit checks, no banks breathing down your neck, just instant liquidity whenever you need it.
Which brings us to Section 3, Alternative Cash Flow Machines, yields uncorrelated to the stock market.
Now, the elite protect their portfolios by investing in yields that are completely 100% uncorrelated to the stock market. Honestly, they don't care if the Fed raises interest rates or if tech stocks suddenly crash because their cash flow comes from entirely different mechanisms. There are four massive yield engines the wealthy use to decouple from the wider economy. First up, litigation finance. This involves funding someone else's very strong legal case. If they win, you take a 30 to 50% cut of the settlement. That depends purely on legal merits, completely divorced from the economy. Next, we have IP royalties. This allows you to buy the rights to music, film residuals, or even pharmaceutical patents, and you just sit back and collect 8 to 12% annually every single time a song streams or a pill is sold. Then there's tax liens. This lets you buy other people's overdue property taxes, earning an 18 to 36% interest yield that is literally guaranteed by state governments. And finally, Section 8 real estate. This offers an 18 to 25% cash-on-cash return where the rent checks are, quite literally, guaranteed and paid directly by the US Treasury every single month. In short, the wealthy own the flow of lawsuits, royalties, default debt, and government checks.
Let's dive into a really surprising bonus fact here, just because it proves how incredibly creative alternative cash flow can get. $300 million. That is the amount of money generated in syndicated stud fees by the absolutely legendary racehorse Galileo after he retired. It's wild. Wealthy investors buy fractional shares of a champion horse, and every single time that horse successfully breeds, the owners collect a stud fee. For a top-tier stallion, we're talking $200,000 to $500,000 per cover. That can generate up to $20 million a year in pure cash flow. It is a wildly profitable, highly exclusive asset class that most people don't even know exists. It's like having a money printing machine in a barn.
Moving on to Section 4, Buying the Casino. Systemic ownership and monopoly.
The ultimate transition in wealth creation, folks, is moving from placing bets in the market to owning the actual infrastructure that runs the market itself. For decades, the wealthy were perfectly happy being limited partners in private equity funds, just letting managers invest their money for them. But then, they had an epiphany. They realized the people making the safest, most consistent money were the general partners actually running the fund. So what did they do? They started buying GP stakes, literally buying ownership percentages of the private equity firms themselves.
When you own a GP stake, you are collecting a percentage of the 2% guaranteed management fee that gets paid every year, completely regardless of performance. Plus, you get a cut of the 20% carried interest on every single winning deal across the entire firm. Sovereign wealth funds have literally poured over $100 billion into this exact strategy. They realize they don't want to play the game anymore. They just want to be the house.
And we see this massive systemic advantage in the tech sector too. Retail investors always get super excited to buy shares during a public IPO. But here's the harsh truth. Buying an IPO means you are basically buying at the exit price for the founders. The real, life-changing wealth was already made years ago. Accredited investors entirely bypass this through something called pre-IPO secondaries. They are out there buying shares from early employees of massive private companies. Think places like SpaceX or OpenAI, years before the public ever gets a chance to even look at them. They capture that explosive 100x growth phase, while retail is left fighting over the table scraps of a mature, slow-growing company.
But hey, you don't need to be a sovereign wealth fund to buy the casino. You can actually do this on a local scale using a really powerful strategy called roll-ups. Right now, as we speak, millions of baby boomers own small, profitable, but highly fragmented businesses. We're talking HVAC companies, plumbing services, pool cleaning businesses, and they are getting older and are desperate to retire. You can step in and acquire these businesses using seller financing and then combine their operations under one sleek, tech-enabled brand. Suddenly, you've created a local monopoly. A single $1 million business might only sell for a 2x multiple, right? But if you combine 10 of those into a $10 million powerhouse, that larger entity can easily sell for an 8 to 10x multiple. You are engineering massive, incredible value simply by organizing the system.
So we've broken down the fortresses, the smart debt hacks, the alternative yields, and the systemic monopolies of the ultra-wealthy. But how do we bring all these hyper-exclusive concepts down to earth for you? It's time for Section 5, our Learn and Invest Blueprint, Real-World Application.
Before we wrap up today, I really want you to take a second and seriously reflect on these 3 questions. First, how can you shift your mindset from just chasing volatile returns to actually controlling uncorrelated steady cash flow? Second, as AI continues its rapid disruption of the digital economy, what local physical systemic advantages, like real estate or those local business roll-ups we just talked about, can you build that algorithms simply can't touch? And finally, in your work life, your personal productivity, and your wealth creation, are you just blindly playing the game, or are you taking real responsible steps to buy the casino? I want you to take a moment to really internalize that and think about how you can apply these principles to your own personal growth and responsibility.
If there is one core thesis you take away from our explainer today, it is absolutely this. Stop optimizing for the game. Please stop stressing over the retail mechanics that were literally designed to keep you trapped. The elite build massive wealth because they optimize the system. They control the flow of assets, they ruthlessly leverage the tax code to keep what they earn, and they strategically position themselves to own the infrastructure. Whether it's through a local business roll-up, utilizing smart, tax-free debt, or exploring uncorrelated yields, your practical solution starting today is to shift your entire perspective from being a consumer to being an owner. As you look at your own portfolio today, ask yourself, are you still just playing the odds, or are you finally ready to become the house? Thank you for your most valuable asset, your time. As always, learn and invest.
I stay